morning. We're here in the courtyard at Camp Paula Baptist Church, and we want to take a look at Malachi chapter 2, verse 10 through 16. Malachi is the last of the writing prophets. He's a contemporary of Nehemiah and Ezra. About 100 years after the return from captivity, now the people of God are back in trouble. They're not in crisis like they were when they were removed to go to exile, but they're complacent and they're questioning God. There's a dispute going on between the people and God. And so they ask questions. They ask questions, in what way, God, are you loving us? Things aren't going well. The other one is, what's wrong with our worship? The priests were leading people in worship that were not of the true and living God as established in the covenant. And this section, chapter 2, verse 10 through 16, really deals with the question, God, why aren't you listening to us? So there are several key words in this passage, and I'll be breaking it down and reading sections as we go through it. The key words are breaking faith. There's something that has happened by the people of God, and God is explaining to them through Malachi that you are breaking faith. You are in fact unfaithful. You're pursuing idolatry. You are breaking the covenant. And the second word is covenant. You'll see it in the bigger picture of the covenant that God established with the people of God, and then the covenant of marriage. And then one more word is the word one, and we'll see that as we read through the text. So let's take a look at verse 10. Have we not all one Father? Did not God create us? Why do we profane? Why do we undo? Why do we not honor the covenant of our fathers by breaking faith with one another? Don't we have one Father? This takes us all the way back, even beyond Abraham, to the concept that God is the Father of His people. That there is a deep sense that the King, the great King, establishes a covenant with His people so that He will say, I will be your God, you will be my people, and you will be blessed if you remain faithful. There is this covenant relationship established by the great King, and now as a father, not just as a one in authority, it's a father relationship. Aren't we all one Father under the covenant? We have one Father. And then it says, did not God, one God, create us all? So this idea of creation goes all the way back to the beginning of time when God established all things. And then we see in Deuteronomy where God created a people, not because they were good, not because they were worthy, more worthy than other people, but because God chose them. So the act of the covenant of the fathers, that divine covenant that God said, you will be my people, is now being defamed. Unfaithfulness. There's no honor. There's no respect. They're just complacent. Culture has absorbed them from the distinctiveness of being God's people. So listen, verse 11. Judah, you have broken faith. A detestable thing has been committed in Israel, in Jerusalem. Judah has desecrated the sanctuary the Lord loves by marrying the daughter of a foreign god. This is the picture of idolatry that now has become at the center of God's people. This idea of intimate marriage of the daughter of a foreign god who cannot speak, who cannot hear, who cannot walk. This is an abomination to God and a breaking of the covenant. As for the man who does this, whoever he may be, may the Lord cut him off from the tents of Jacob. So you hear this word, the tents of Jacob, Israel, Judah, Jerusalem, the center of the great king, where worship was valued. The people of God have exchanged God for false gods. They've broken faith. And it's interesting to see, even though he brings offerings to the Lord Almighty. One time I was in Indonesia, on the island of Bali, and I was walking down the street because I had a goal to put my feet in the Indian Ocean. I've never been in that part of the world. And so as I was walking down, I noticed outside of all the houses, there was food sitting on a little ledge. They were offering food to God, their God, the multi-gods, the idolatrous God, so that they may be blessed during that day. In essence, that's what was happening. They didn't care. They kept doing the religious thing, thinking that by their acts, God would bless them. And here's what happened. God said, it's an abomination. Where is your heart? Where is your faith? What have you exchanged? The living God for what? The second covenant that's mentioned here is the covenant of marriage. Let's read this. Another thing you do in verse 13. You flood the Lord's altar with tears. You weep and wail because he no longer pays attention to your offerings or accepts them with pleasure from your hand. So in other words, you go in, you try to get his attention, you cry, you yell, you do all these things, which happens even today, in order to get God's attention. That's not worship. That's manipulation of God. And God says, through the prophet Malachi, it's not pleasurable to God. It's idolatry. It's unfaithfulness. Why? It's because the Lord is acting as a witness. What was happening in the breaking of the marriage covenant was that men were throwing away their wives in order to marry pagan wives, daughters of the foreign god, those who would now impact their whole life. God served as a witness between the man and the wife of the youth, because you have broken faith with her, though she is your partner, the wife of the marriage covenant. So you see what Malachi is saying is this. You as God's people are in covenant with God. You as God's people who are married have established a covenant of marriage, of faithfulness, of loyalty, just like that covenant that God has established with his people. But now you have broken that. And God has witnessed your vows, and you're going after other people for two reasons, according to the text. And that's for money, because it seemed like the pagans had better money skills, and for sex. and they said, I'm throwing my wife away, I'm going. And God said, that whole thing is an abomination. Has not the Lord made you one? In flesh and spirit they are His. And why one? Because He wants God's people to produce people of faith in the home. So guard yourself in the Spirit. Do not break faith with your wife of your youth. Don't throw her away, men. Don't go after other women. Though you appear to be faithful to your wife, what's being said here is you are breaking faith and God is unpleased. And then he said these words, I hate divorce. Very strong words. And that is because he hates the breaking of relationship. Says the Lord God of Israel, I hate a man covering himself with violence, throwing your wife away for something that isn't yours, that's something you have not established. Guard yourself in your spirit and do not break faith. Let me just say three things. As God's people, we are in covenant with the Lord. He has initiated it. He calls us to be faithful. When we break faith and go after the idols of our heart and our mind, God is displeased and pulls back from the sin that takes all kinds of breaking of relationships. So first of all, remember the Father loves you. And He has created you and the concept of marriage. And God hates infidelity. Second, sin causes a disconnect with God and breaks down and is harmful for society. There's a cluster of sins in Proverbs chapter 6 that says God hates a lying tongue. God hates this. God hates that. It's those clusters that break apart society. Third, guard your spirit. Guard your heart. Do not go after idolatrous thinking and breaking of relationship. If you are married today, there's an unending commitment that God has called you to the person of your youth. Cherish, honor, because in doing that, you are honoring the God who has called you to be His people. So let's, as His people, honor the marriage covenant so that the covenant of God and the King will be honored in our society. May God bless you.